great pleasure that I get to introduce one of my very favorite women and coaches, Wendy Wallbridge. Wendy is the producer of TEDx Sand Hill Road Women and Women's Evolutionary Leadership in the Silicon Valley Networks for professional women to learn, connect, and evolve together. Wendy is dedicated to engaging and empowering women to become leaders and agents of change by shifting their thinking about themselves and what's possible, giving them confidence in their abilities beyond what they ever imagined, and creating lives that are authentic, expansive, and meaningful. Her book, Spiraling Upward, which I have read and I personally recommend to each of you. There will be book signings in our exhibit hall. Teaches women to cultivate the 5 co-creative powers of energy, thoughts, feelings, speech, and action, the fundamentals of self-creation in order to redefine and reauthor their lives. Her book offers an inspiring and cogent roadmap for any woman seeking a way to balance the yearnings of the heart with practical expression in a world that desperately needs women who are wise and true to themselves. Through Wendy's women's leadership and teamwork programs and executive coaching, she guides leaders to create 21st century organizations where both men and women thrive. And my experience from working with Wendy is every time I'm even in her energy zone, she's so giving, authentic, wants so much to enhance and enrich each of our lives. So please give Wendy a very warm welcome.
Welcome, everyone. Wow, that was really touching. I'm so pleased to be here. It's such an opportunity. Thank you. Such an opportunity to speak to you this morning. And what an honor and privilege to follow Carolyn, who I've known for many years, but she was way ahead of so many people in terms of being a trailblazer and leader who had the vision and foresight to know that women in technology needed to come together to learn, to network, to be celebrated, and to form a community where women rise. So I just want to give a round of applause to Carolyn. You know, I hadn't planned to say this morning, but last night after listening to Patricia, watching her, being in her energy, it just occurred to me that I wanted to start my talk a different way. You know how she talked about the most important thing for her was who she wanted to be, right? And I think that in who she wanted to be was to be brave. And I also never had any real goals in life. Like, she didn't want to be famous. She didn't really want to be an actor. She wanted to be brave. And that was also true for me. I didn't make up goals that I wanted to be an executive coach or that I wanted to be a consultant or that I wanted to be an author. That just sort of evolved out of my commitment to be wise. I always wanted to be wise. And it started when I was about 20. I thought, you know, what I want to be, I thought I'd be a Gestalt therapist or I'd be somebody like that. There wasn't coaching back then. And I also wanted to have an adventure. I wanted to have an adventure. So I really looked at my life last night as I was trying to go to sleep, and I saw that there were all these things that happened in my life that correlated with that, starting with, you know, leaving the East Coast where my whole family was to move to California when I was 18, and taking on a coaching practice just 6 months after I had received a kidney transplant. I had a 14-year blood disease, and that was an adventure, and resulting in a kidney transplant, and I just started a coaching practice way before there was coaching. Pretty brave. Writing a book. That is one of the bravest things you can possibly do. It took me a long time, and I'm a perfectionist, so it took me even longer. And then my latest adventure has been to take on my 13-year-old nephew. And I know, how many mothers do we have in the room? Okay, you know what I'm talking about. I have been single most of my life. I've never had a husband or a partner, so taking on a child was a big thought, a big idea, you know. And what happened was, a year and a half ago, my sister died, and she had lost custody of him prior to that, and he was in and out of foster homes. He was about 10 or 11 then. And so I made a real intention to get into his life. And I just went for it, and I visited him when I could, or I brought him out here, and we bonded. And then it became clear that he couldn't stay in the situation he was in any longer, and I was given the opportunity to take him as my son. And it was a big adventure, but here's how I made the decision. I looked at my life from the end of my life, and I thought to myself, I told Carolyn this last night, I thought to myself, would I have wanted to do this or not do it? And immediately it was clear. You know, I took him on more for me than him, because who it's going to make me be, how it's going to develop me, is into a really wise person, right? So I wanted to start that out, and I really, and here's a funny thing about it. So now I do all these things that I never had to do before, or never wanted to do. Baseball games, 3 hours sitting in a field waiting for him to come up one time to hit. Going to a basketball game, now I know what threes are, right? Some of you may know that. And movies, we have to debate over what movie we're going to watch, if we're going to watch a movie. So he went out the other night, and we watched Night at the Museum. And it wasn't the first one, which I haven't seen, it was the middle one. That's the one when Ben Stiller is so in trouble because all the History Museum has come alive, and and the bad guy has called forth the 3 worst criminals possible to fight against Ben Stiller. You know, Ivan the Terrible, and Al Capone, and one of the other guys. It was really scary. So I was trying to keep track of it. But when I lit up was when Amelia Earhart came alive. Amelia Earhart comes on the scene, played by Amy Adams, and she brings with her this verve for life. She's looking at this crazy chaos that he's in, and she's like, I want in. She wants to play. She wants to be in on the adventure. Can you remember that part of yourself? Do you live from that part of yourself? I forget it sometimes, but that is really what we're about. She is a person who said, there's more to life than being a passenger. And she kept telling him, have fun. You know, she's the one who flew, the first person to fly solo across the Atlantic. She was such an adventurer. So today, you know, and the biggest adventure that we have in life to take on is to be ourselves. To be our authentic selves is one of the bravest adventures you can take on. So we live at the most opportune time for women to lead with our unabashedly authentic self. Do I point this in a specific direction? Sorry. Anywhere. Okay, there she is. That's who I was looking for. Thank you. And I was also relieved to see that Patricia read some of her notes, so forgive me if I look at my notes tonight, but I feel full permission to do that now. So we are in one of the greatest social transformations of our time. Women are running the governments of countries as powerful and widespread as Germany and Ireland, Bangladesh and New Zealand, Mozambique, Chile, Jamaica. Women are now TV lead anchors, Ivy League college presidents, bank presidents, corporate CEOs, movie directors, majors in the Marines, 4-star Navy admirals, and presidential candidates. Most of these are unthinkable just 30 years ago. Never before in history have women been so degreed or so represented as decision makers in all of the different economic and political sectors of the world. Never before have we been so awash in opportunities to not just participate, but to shape our world. And as an executive coach and speaker and facilitator of women's leadership programs for many years, I can tell you that it is now that there is finally a significant critical mass of women longing to live a larger life. We want to be more, we want to do more, and we want to give. We want to give to change this world. I see it. Believe me, I have coached for so long, and it is happening now. So here's some numbers for you. 51%. We make up over half of the world's population and half of the workforce. 85. Patricia corrected me, it's actually 87 now. That's the percentage of purchasing decisions women now make or influence. Okay, there's some missing here. Not sure what happened, but 1 billion got missing, and that's the number of women participating in the global workforce. And 87% is the percentage of purchasing decisions that women now make or influence. 22 trillion. That's the number of dollars that women control globally, and it is predicted that 2/3 of consumer wealth will be in women's hands within the next decade. And as you've probably heard, there's indisputable research now that shows that when women lead, performance improves. Duh. As well, teams with women on them make better decisions. But it's great to have the evidence and the clinical, studies. And in a work world that will continue to be more fluid and more virtual, the demand for female management skills, and I'll clarify that later, will continue to grow. So the UK Chartered Management Institute looked ahead to 2018 and predicted that women will rapidly move up the chain of command and their emotional intelligence skills will become even more essential. That trend will accelerate with a looming talent shortage. The Employment Policy Foundation estimates that within the next decade, there will be a 6 million person gap between the number of college graduates and the number of college-educated workers needed to cover job growth. And who receives the majority of college and advanced degrees? You know the answer. Women. So the world is really hungry for our unique style of leadership. But while the tide is changing and more women are being elevated into leadership roles, there is still much work to do, as Patricia very aptly pointed out. Women are entering the workforce and stepping into management positions at the same rate as men, yet we are not expected to be equally represented in leadership roles until 2085. Not a good prediction. So how do we upend that? The best companies, and I work with some of them, are already re-engineering their organizations to attract talented women and fast-track them into leadership. But there is much transformation that needs to happen within most organizations. Let's take a quick look at it. Change is needed on the outside, meaning within organizations. There's flexibility of workflow. This is so that women can thrive in organizations. And I just thought I would make this list. You've probably seen pieces of it in different places, but let's look at it all together. So to address the unconscious bias, it's a popular word now, but really we need to address it. To re-engineer systems and structures so that we can recognize and reward women's strengths and contributions. To increase sponsorship and mentors for women. Hospitable cultures. We need to get rid of, or at least say no to, the bro-grammar culture in technology and the frat boy culture that somehow has been acceptable up until now. And then lastly, well, also let me say about hospitable cultures, one way to do that is to create pods inside of organizations where you have coaching relationships or women's forums. Many companies sort of pay lip service to this, but we need real communities where women can talk about what they're trying that's different, where they're taking risks, and process that so that it's safe for them to try new things. The higher you get to the top, the less women there are, and the scarier it is to go outside your comfort zone. When you all know, when you're under stress, it's the last time you're going to take a chance, right? You need a hospitable, secret little pod so that you can have a place to talk. So that's a really important ingredient that my company addresses. So we need to push for these changes inside our organizations, and we also need to do more for ourselves. Sorry. Hold on a minute. Equal pay. Hello? Okay, thank you so much, Patricia, for really going for that on her talk. And that's, not the least of what we need to do. So there are also changes needed on the inside. There are things we need to do for ourselves. The question that you might start asking yourself is, where do I currently source my power from? So what do I mean by that? Is my value dependent on what people think? Is my value dependent on what people's approval? Rick? There we go. Okay, is my value dependent on money? Is my value dependent on approval? Is my value dependent on appearance? Is my value dependent on status? Is my value dependent on approval? We said that. Title. A lot of the people I start coaching think their value is dependent on that. Or how fast I can get things done. How many of you play a game with yourself to see how fast you can get everything done and how amazing you are as a synthesizer? I have a client who told me that it was, I better not say, but it was like she restrains herself from physical things that need to happen for herself as a test to see how fast she can get things done and how much she can get done before then. Not uncommon, okay? So these are a dangerous place to source your power from. We need to take back our power and be connected to our innate value as women. What it is that you individually bring to the table, what you individually contribute, and who you are. That is a new kind of power. When you have authentic power, no one can take it away from you, and nothing can stop you. So it comes from knowing who you are, what you stand for, and be willing to give voice and take actions on behalf of that. So we each need to do some inner work in order to establish this inner authority, an unwavering sense of worthiness, a locus of internal control that translates into what everybody wants, gravitas and confidence. That's what I hear that women want. How many of you wish you had more of that? Okay, then listen up. So what do I mean by inner work? What do I mean by that? Becoming aware of and excavating your strengths, your passions, and also freeing yourself from limiting beliefs. When Amelia Earhart was asked, why did she want to fly? She said, because I want to be free. Real freedom only comes from not being hijacked by your own negative talk, your own limiting beliefs. You can be as free in terms of being able to do what you want when you want it and still feel completely bondage inside. Freedom comes, real liberation comes from standing in the value that you are and claiming your inner worth. And it really is a matter of practice. So developing inner authority helps us trust ourselves even when we're not 100% sure that the direction we're going is the right direction, even when we're leading other people, we're not sure, but still having that knowingness that you're going to make it work out or that you'll be able to handle whatever comes. It comes from honoring our emotional, spiritual, and physical needs. That's a very simple thing, but think about it. If you were to honor your emotional, physical, and spiritual needs, even by taking 5 minutes a day to reflect on what you personally need to thrive and what the greater world is asking of you, it would give you the energy and the enthusiasm to take on these big tasks and responsibilities. We also have to be self-directed enough to seek out the projects and people that inspire us at work and shed what doesn't ultimately satisfy. We can't always do that fast, but there are ways to start shedding those things that don't turn us on and don't excite us. So if we don't do those things, we will not stay. And if we do not stay, we will not be able to shape the culture for the women coming up behind us and for ourselves. And that's really important. We really need to do that. So a big step in that direction. So calling all women. I'm calling you. I loved what Carolyn said at the end of her talk last night. Make a decision right now to lead the most authentic life you can and make a difference with your life. It's a decision. And probably half of this room at least has already made that decision. How many of you have made that decision? I'd love to see. Fantastic. Awesome. Love it. Thank you. So a big step in that direction is to examine and question the stereotypical masculine leadership style. You know, we've all adopted that. It's called adaptive leadership because that was the one that we saw. But we're coming on board now. So there's a new kind of leadership that's possible. It's about being authentic. So there is a deep stirring, arising on the planet of what I'm going to call the feminine. So many of us feel the call to move away from a very masculine way of living, striving and pushing, where the goal is more about perfectionism over wholeness and efficiency over love. This conference is a driver in that shift. When you think of any significant movement that changed the course of history, the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the passing of same-sex marriage, it shifted by changing the conversation, by changing people's hearts and minds, by raising the level of consciousness. Yes. And if you study how breakthroughs occur, for instance, when domestic violence laws were passed, it wasn't strong leadership, politicians, police. It was the women's movement that forced lawmakers and executives to stand up and say, enough is enough. Women had to be the insurgents. This gathering today, the women and men on either side of you, are working in partnership with each other to elevate women's leadership, and that's what we need to change the conversation. And it starts with every one of us. Behavioral change, the wonderful Linda Bernardi changed my whole talk when I spoke with her prior to this, and she inspired me to put this piece in. Behavioral change only happens when we evolve beliefs. So if you think about slavery, slavery had to become an outrage in our minds before the laws and policies started changing. We had to get outraged by it, right? So we had to change our thoughts first. That's also true of us as women. If we don't change our beliefs, we're not going to change our behaviors. So when we continually discard limiting beliefs about ourselves and others, we evolve past our personality, limited identity, to our humanity self, our whole self, the truth of who we are. It's only then that we can challenge the things that don't feel right, where we speak truth to power, or challenge the dominant masculine paradigm that pushes us into overdrive and burnout and overconsumption. So the next time you see yourself holding back when you want to speak up, ask yourself the question, what must I be believing to be doing this behavior that I don't want to do? What must I be believing? Or saying something that's inauthentic, what must I be believing to be saying that? It's a really good question to ask with compassion to yourself. So only then can we bravely diverge from the linear masculine path to our unique spiral path. A complete leader is someone who knows how to put the strengths of the masculine in service to our feminine wisdom. So also it's when we can naturally lead with what we might be called feminine values. So not the feminine attributes that are assigned by our culture, but deeper values of wisdom, empathy, inclusiveness, wholeness, and love. Values and strengths that are being called for in our workplaces, in politics, in education, and in women's leadership. They are a ground of being for where we want to go next. And we will need our masculine strengths. Those are hard-won masculine strengths, the ones that we have, things like tenacity, willpower, strategy, follow-through, muscle, effort, all of those. What if all of those strengths that we have were put in service to our feminine wisdom? So, how do we start today? Oops, I love this. That came a little too soon, but I love this thing. So how do we start today with practice? Remember, we don't have to do leadership the way we've ever seen it done before. It's something that we know innately how to do. All the mothers in the room, you've been leaders. Anybody else, you've led. So it's about who you are, not trying to put something on top of who you are, but being who you are in all your brilliant authenticity, in all your original, amazing, accomplished, sometimes quirky self, and to make a break for authenticity. That's a beautiful piece of art. I could tell you later. I have it written down. So this is how we find our voice and speak our opinions and needs. And here we are, a room full of creative thinkers connected to more innovators. And let's challenge ourselves and each of us to make a quantum leap in our ability to be authentic and build our community even stronger. So how do we practice leadership? How do we project gravitas? By being authentic. Authenticity requires a little vulnerability. Vulnerability. It's the key in human trust and connection, and it's fundamental for leaders. It's something that we need in order to build connections with people. But we usually have it that being vulnerable is being weak or that it's hard. It's definitely uncomfortable, because you're shedding a little bit of the cover, the personality-identified self, in order to connect on a deeper level with someone. We don't want to look bad, we don't want people to judge us, but vulnerability is the secret to connection and to transparency. So as Mike Robbins, my friend, author of Be Yourself, Everyone Else Is Taken, says, he says, you wouldn't worry so much about what other people think if you realized how little they did. People are mostly thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about what your skirt looks like or whether your blouse has a wrinkle in it, which mine does. But we've all experienced being vulnerable. When you want something really badly and you're not afraid you might not get it, or you don't get it, or you get it and then you want to hold on to it, all of those things, taking a risk, all of those things lead to feeling vulnerable. So here's an analogy that Mike taught me. Authenticity requires vulnerability. And he talks about this iceberg. So most of us just see the top of the iceberg when we talk to each other. And there's this whole bottom of the iceberg. So I'm going to start out by doing what he taught me to do. You start out by saying, if you really knew me, you would know. So if you really knew me, you would know that I sometimes feel completely overwhelmed by being a new mother, instant mom. I sometimes think I cannot do it. Every time I go to give a talk, I get really anxious. So those are some things about me. So would you be willing to try this out with me? Okay, good. So I'm going to give you some help. I'm going to teach you the first co-creative power in my book, Spiraling Upward. I mean, I'll give you a little taste of it. By shifting our energy. Energy is a powerful thing. So did you know that your body can change your state? Let's see if we can try that out. Let's practice. Oh! Get up, get up, get up, get up. Get up. So the brilliant TED speaker and social psychologist Amy Cuddy taught us that she's teaching us all about how nonverbals change the way we feel about ourselves. These are simple things that you can do before you go into a meeting, before you do a talk. I forgot to do mine this morning, but I'll do it right now with you. So she taught that even people who are congenitally blind are the same as people, have the same experience as people who can see. When they win a physical competition, they do the same thing. They go like this. Okay, so let's everybody try that. Woo! Feel it. Just feel what that feels like in your body. Great, great. Okay, so that's my preparation for you to be able to be vulnerable. So you can sit down. Thank you. So here's what we're going to do. It's going to be a quick, fun thing, but it's going to be powerful. So I want every single person to participate. And here's the only rule. There's going to be 2 minutes each. You're going to have the partner sitting next to you. If you don't have a partner sitting next to you, move right now to find someone who can sit next to you, but don't talk. Okay? No talking. And what I'm going to do is after 2 minutes, I'm going to raise my hand, and that means you need to raise your hand and close your mouth. Okay, just so that we can control because I know what will happen when we start talking. But this is really fun. Okay, so hold on a sec. Hello. Here we go. It's just got a delay, this thing. Okay, we're practicing here being seen and known. That's what you want to practice, being seen and known. You're going to complete the following sentences. And you're only going to have 2 minutes to do it. If you really knew me, you would know. And you're just going to share something that's something that you wouldn't normally share, perhaps. Next question, the next sentence to complete is something I'm proud of is. So maybe there's a brave experience you had in your life that you're proud of, and you can say that. Just make it brief. The third one is something I'm passionate about changing is. And the fourth one is one thing I could use support with is. Now, we women are really good at giving, right? But how good are we at asking for support? So you want to really think about it. What could you use support with? Maybe you want to connect to someone else at the conference. Maybe you want some support creating a resume. I don't know, but you make it up. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes for each side. Please get with your partner. Pick an A and a B. Okay. Okay. B, you start. And we're going to give you 2 minutes. Complete those sentences. Start. Thank you. Am I smiling? This? Okay, let me get them off. And should I pretend I'm talking like, and so, blah, 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 blah. Yes. Okay. Is it up? 10-second warning. Okay, time's up. Raise your hand. Close your mouth. Awesome, you guys are good. Okay, switch partners, go the other way. Don't try to fix their problem. Are you doing it? Ten seconds. Ten seconds. Please stop, raise your hand, close your mouth. Thank you. Oh, you did that brilliantly. How was that? Great, great. That's what we're here for. That's what this conference is all about. And remember, you don't have to solve their problem, but if you'd like to exchange emails at the end of this talk so that you can support each other in following up on whatever it is that you just discovered, don't miss that opportunity. Okay, so Charlie Rose was interviewing Madeline Albright, and he asked her, why aren't there more women in leadership positions? And she said, because women make friends, they don't network. Men network. Now that's not really completely true, right? But women do seek approval, and we want people to like us. We aren't as good at asking for what we want, and that's what you have to get good at. So I invite you to be here not as an audience or observer, but as a woman, a leader, and a voice that has the potential for shifting the Silicon Valley network or wherever you come from through the strength of our community. Every time you speak up, you shift things. Every time you are authentically yourself, you strengthen your ability to show up and give others permission to show up more powerfully too. So I ask you to make a commitment right now to authentically engage with at least 3 people at this conference over the time that you're here. And you want to practice being vulnerable and authentic because that's how you create a bond. So, yeah, thank you. Those things not working, so I'm now flagging. Okay, more. Excuse me. Put it all on there. Thank you. So these are Linda reminded me, we don't want to practice having a script. We want to practice being ourselves, but sometimes it helps to have training wheels, right? So I give you permission to use this as your introduction when you walk up to someone you don't know. So as soon as you walk up to someone, say, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you yet, I am so-and-so, and then refer to the thing you said. One thing I'm proud of is, one thing I'm passionate about changing is, and the thing I could use support with is, and just see what happens between the two of you. How many of you are willing to commit to do that with 3 people over this conference? Great. Oh my God, that's so great. Okay, change the slide. Please. Because I want to introduce our next speaker. I'm waiting for the slide to change. Okay, so the last thing I want to say is that we can't do this alone. We have to do this together. We need to support each other as women in whatever way we can. If you've got a position of any kind of influence, reach out and help someone else. One more slide. There, more? Thank you. If you want to be on my list or be notified of any things that I'm doing, you can tweet me, you can Facebook. There's a private TEDx Sand Hill Road Women Facebook group that we have. You just have to go to, can you go back, please? TEDx Sand Hill Road Women, and that will connect you to our WELL network. And you can also tweet me if you want to be on our list. I'm Wendy Wallbridge. And if you want a free chapter to the book, go to my website, Spiral Up, and you'll get a free chapter to Spiraling Upward by signing up on the list. And I'll be signing books, I think it's between 11 and 12